Hey everyone, welcome back. In the last lesson, we finished up talking about anonymous users and why we are going to need them in this app. So let's take a look at the code to make that happen. First thing I'm going to do is log out of the app to make sure that we are starting without any users authenticated in the app. So I'm going to say log out, and that should bring us back here. Perfect. Now, at all times, we want there to be either an anonymous user or a logged in user. So first thing we're gonna do is in our home vc.swift file, up here in view did load, we are going to do a check to see if there is any users logged in, so that the very first time someone opens the app, there will be neither an anonymous or a logged in user. So at that point, we are going to add an anonymous user here. And that is very simple to do. We're just going to do a check to see if there is, to make sure that there is no logged in user. So I'm going to say auth.current user is equal to nil. So if there is neither an anonymous or a logged in user, we're going to then sign in anonymously, all right? And so this is very simple. All we got to do is say auth.sign in anonymously. And we have a completion here. We can say result and error. We're not really going to do anything with the result. We're just going to check to make sure that there was no error. So I'm going to say if let error is equal to error, then we will just debug print that error. All right, so when I run this now, we should sign in anonymously. So I'm going to save this and run it. All right, so now let's go ahead and check that that worked. I'm gonna open up our console here in our Firebase project, check out authentication, and I'm going to refresh this. And nothing happened, and that is because, let's see here, if it gave us, here we go, yep. So the sign-in provider is disabled for this Firebase project, enable it in the Firebase console. So the reason we aren't seeing a new anonymous user here is because we forgot to set or enable the sign-in method. So here we have all of our sign-in methods, email and password is enabled, but we have not enabled anonymous. Okay, so here we go, let's say enable, and we can say save. All right, let's go ahead and try that again. I'm gonna go back to Xcode and run that again. All right, and back to our console. Let's go back here to users, and boom, there we go. Identifier anonymous. You can see here that the provider is just a blank user icon, but we still have a user UID, okay? So take note of this UID, 4EHS, all right? Because what we're gonna do is when a user registers, we are going to link that new email account with this anonymous user. So let's go back into Xcode and go to our register vc.swift file. And here under register clicked, we are gonna do some changes. Instead of creating a new user with email and password, instead what we are going to do is we are going to get our currently logged in user, whether it's anonymous or it could be any of the other providers. We're going to get that user and link it with whatever new provider we are wanting to use, in our case, email and password. So I'm going to go ahead and get that user, which in our case will be an anonymous user. I'm going to say guard let auth user equal auth.current user. And if there isn't one, then we are just going to return out of this function. But once we have that user, we are going to say auth user dot link and retrieve data. And you can see here it says that this associates a user account from a third-party identity provider with this user and returns additional identity provider data. So we need to provide it with an auth credential, okay? So when we were using auth.auth.create user, we were essentially doing that behind the scenes with this email and password. It created a auth credential and then used that to create our new user. Here we need to manually create our credential. So I'm gonna say let credential equal, and we need an email credential. So I'm gonna say email auth provider dot credential. And you can see here that we just need to pass in an email and a password. We want this one right here. So the email is email, which we have, and the password, which we have already. And so then we can pass in that credential into our link and retrieve data here. So I'm going to say credential, then we have our completion, just press enter, and that will give back a result and an optional error. And we can just take what we had here in our previous method we were using, create user. I'm going to cut that, and the result is going to be the same. Just paste it right in here. Once we link our email auth provider with our anonymous user, we are going to dismiss and carry on with our app. So we can use this method to link any approved provider with a currently authenticated user by providing a credential. In our case, we're linking an email password account with an anonymous account, but the process is the same if you wanted to link, say, a Facebook, Twitter, GitHub account, or any that Firebase supports. You just have to link the currently logged in account with the provided credentials. For instance, if you were linking a Facebook account, you could have let Facebook credential equal Facebook auth provider dot credential, and then you would need to pass in an access token. If you were doing Twitter, you would say Twitter credential equals Twitter auth provider dot credential, and you would need to pass in a token and a secret. Now these tokens and secrets, these will come from the process of logging in using the Facebook and Twitter SDKs. But once you have that, the process is the same. You will link and retrieve the data, and you will pass in the desired credential. Now remember our analogy of multiple sets of keys to the same house? This process, link and retrieve data, is essentially you giving a set of keys to someone else, right? So we had an anonymous user, and now we are giving the email and password provider a set of keys and saying you are also allowed to access this account. If we added Facebook, we would be giving a set of keys to that Facebook account to access and log in with those credentials. So let's see this in action. So if I run this again, we are still going to be authenticated as that anonymous user that we have here, remember, for EHS. Let's go back here, open our simulator. But now, when I go to create a new user, actually I just realized that we are going to need to change something in our home VC, because when I just clicked on log out, that actually logged out our anonymous user as well. So what we need to do is come down here to our home vc.swift, and so what we are going to do is just comment out this sign out part. Okay, so I'm gonna save that and rerun it. And now we should be logged in anonymously, and we need to test that our linking of the anonymous account with an email account is working. So again, just checking this is anonymous still. And since I forgot that we were signing out, we have a new anonymous user now, which is a PJ8N. So keep that in mind, because when we come here to create a new user, we are going to link this new user with that anonymous account. So I'm going to say Johnny, email at johnny@non.com, 123.123.123.123, and say register. And there we go. So now when I refresh this, we should see this anonymous icon turn into an email provider, and we should see Johnny@anon right here. So here we go. Ooh, there we go. We converted it to an email provider, and we now have a fully authenticated, logged in, non-anonymous user. Perfect. So let's go back into Xcode. And we are going to need to modify our viewDidAppear and our logout function just a little bit. Here in viewDidAppear, what we need to do is we need to do a check to see if the user is anonymous, not simply that there is any user logged in. Okay, so we're going to say if let user is equal to auth.auth.current user, and that user is not anonymous, not user dot anonymous is anonymous. in which case we will say log out. Otherwise, we're going to say log in. So again, if we are logged in and the user is not anonymous, then we log out. Otherwise, if we are anonymous, then we are going to have it say log in. All right, so now our login out clicked function. So this one's a little bit more complex. Since our login button actually toggles between login and logout functionality, if we are in anonymous state, we don't want to actually sign out of the Firebase session. We want to keep that anonymous user logged in. We just want to present the login page. However, if we are logged in with an email account and we click log out, we need to sign out of the Firebase authentication state. However, here is the wrinkle. If we log out, we will enter a no auth state, and we need to be logged in anonymously after we log out so that we can again go through the process of, if the user then creates a new user or someone else creates a user, that they will be able to do so. So we need to return back to an anonymous state after we log out. So we are going to go ahead and change this up quite a bit. So I'm just going to comment all of that out. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, we're going to get the user. So I'm going to say guard let user is equal to auth.auth.current user else return. And remember, we can expect to always be in a anonymous or an email state. So there should always be a user. If there's not, then we'll just return out of this and something else is going wrong. So if the user is anonymous and we click on log out, in this case, it'll say login, then we don't want to log out. All we want to do is present the login controller, okay? Else, we are logged in as an email authentication. And so here we need to sign out of the authentication state. So this happens inside of a do catch. So I'm gonna say do catch, and we're going to say try auth.auth.sign out. And then once we sign out, then we need to sign back in anonymously. So I'm going to say auth.auth.sign in anonymously. And we have a result, optional error. And if there is an error, if let error is equal to error, then we will just debug print that error. And then we are going to, again, present the login controller. And here in the catch, this is we're in a closure, so I need to say self. And finally, here in the catch, we are going to also debug print that error. Very good. Let's go ahead and delete this commented code. And let's run this one more time. All right, so we are logged in with that Johnny@Anon account. So if I click on logout, I'm going to go ahead and put a breakpoint here so we can see the flow. So we're going to log out, we're going to sign out, then we are going to sign back in anonymously and then present the, this should not be inside of the if let error. That should be right here. There we go. And then I need to rerun that to get that code change in there. And what we should expect to happen is when I click log out, we should hit this breakpoint, we sign out, then we sign back in anonymously. And if there was no error, then we present the login controller. Yep, there we go. And we're back. And now we should be in a new anonymous state. So I'm gonna go back into Safari, refresh this, and we should see a new anonymous user. And there we go. We actually have two because I messed up with that present login controller code. But one of these, WFJ probably, is the one that will be converted if we then created a new user. All right, so just to recap in our code what we did in this lesson, we learned how to sign in a user anonymously. We learned how to then convert an existing user, or I should say link an existing user with a new sign-in provider by providing the credential. And then in our home VC, we just did a little bit of logic refactoring to account for having a anonymous user and a email logged in user. All right, so let me know if you have any questions over what we went through in this lesson. If so, I'll try to clarify anything. Hope you enjoyed learning about anonymous users, and I'll see you all in the next one.